Williams, and I'm at Damnation today with the guys from rockflesh.com.
And you're watching rockflesh.com here at Damnation, and I'm with A.A. Williams.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too.
So, lots of things to talk about, but let's actually sort of start with almost the obvious, and you've literally come off stage, you were in that coveted 12:30 slot. How did it go?
It was great. I mean, I had such a lovely time. I've wanted to play this festival for a long time now, and it's been on my list since forever, really, since the very first, I started playing in 2019, and ever since, I've come here as a punter when it was in Leeds, and now when last year I came here for the first time in Manchester, and it was lovely. Opening a stage is a big deal, and it's a kind of coveted slot, like you say. It's a special thing to be offered that, so I'm really glad to have been able to. It's very cool.
So, how much can you actually see from the stage? Because, you play with a lot of mist around you.
You know what? People, I think, forget that on the stage we can see all of you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, you see somebody drop their mobile phone, or you see someone answering the phone, or going to the bathroom, or kind of having a good time, singing along, wearing a cool band t-shirt. You see it all. And I think people forget that when they're in the audience, that they're also being observed by the person on stage. It's a two-way street, And
it must have been quite bizarre, because you started whilst both bands were still going on the other stage, and your crowd just increased. It was fantastic to watch. So people moved and people were really getting it.
I'm so glad. I mean, we went on a couple of minutes early because I was worried about the set length. I didn't want to make everything run late. You don't want to be that guy, the first one on, ruining it for everybody else. I don't want to do that. So we went on a little early, knowing that the first song takes a little bit of time to warm up and kind of get going, knowing that we could kind of kick in just after clock struck 12:30, which I think worked pretty well. And it's lovely because the stages are so close together. You can see everybody kind of coming from A to B, and it's really easy for the audience to move from one to the other. It's not like they've got to move across town, they haven't got to go upstairs. It's really easy. So it was lovely to see everybody kind of waft in just at the right time.
And this is something you talk about, sort of having been here before, and actually the stuff you're doing is, let's be honest, adjacent to metal. It sort of sits alongside it. It probably isn't metal, or it's metal deconstructed, but it's adjacent. How do you see that working in your head? Even though you're very, very honest about the fact that you've been here before, you've been to Leeds and stuff, yet what you're doing doesn't quite fit.
I think what I often find is that I provide something for people that maybe the other bands they listen to doesn't. And there is a softness to what I do and an emotional aspect to what I do that, if we're honest, a lot of the artists performing today, there's a lot of loud, there's a lot of volume, there's a lot of heavy vocal, there's a lot of that stuff, and that serves a purpose hugely for people. But sometimes you just need to be kind of wrapped in a little sonic blanket and taken somewhere, and not all of my songs do that, but parts of them do, and I like that I can take people on a journey and kind of let them feel things differently to some of the other artists that are here, but still having common threads between me and them. Do you know what I mean?
And it's that common thread. It is, the stuff you're talking about, it is emotional, it's very vulnerable, it's got that, passion. Metal is all about passion. It's got that passion, but it is, overused in the show, but it is slightly deconstructed. It's like almost you've got, okay, let's take the bits of metal, let's all take them apart.
That's it. I mean, I don't write music worrying about what style it is. I just write music that I like. But I listen to a lot of heavy music, I listen to a lot of soft music, I listen to a lot of classical music. So all of those things, they all kind of layer on top of each other when it comes to me working on the arrangements of songs. So I don't stress about what genre it is, who's going to like it, who isn't. But my default is to have that vulnerability, but then also to put on all the fucking pedals and make a racket because I love to do it. But I can't deliver heavy vocals because God knows I've tried and it sounds awful. So I leave that to the people who know what they're doing. And so because I can't do that with my voice, I try and do it with other instruments. So I don't know.
And you talk about that blanket thing. The first album, Forever Blue, came out during lockdown, which was an experience that we would probably never go through again. We would talk about, we'll talk about for years. But the album just grew. When you released it, did you realise just how much traction it would get?
Not at all. I mean, and I'm sure many other artists had conversation with my label about whether we should release it. At that time, it was penciled for the June or July of 2020, and there was a lot of conversation in the months leading up to it. Should we do it? If we do, how is it the right time? Should we wait for this to all blow over? And I said, well, no, I've not released an album before, so I've nothing to compare this to. But what I do know is that everyone's sitting at home and doesn't know what to do with themselves and spending too much time on the internet, and some people are having a pretty rough time right now. So I would rather release this into the world and just see what happens to it. And it became a bit of a comfort for people. And I remember a friend of mine saying that they got the record, came in the post, and they sat down and they put it on and had a smoke, and then they went and turned it over, had a smoke, turned it over again, and just kept going round and round and round. And I love this ritual, especially with vinyl, this kind of having to actually physically get up, move, change it, switch the sides. And it just became, it wasn't written during lockdown, it wasn't written with that stuff in mind, but I think it just coincided in such a way that, you're reaching people when they are feeling vulnerable. It was not a nice time for anybody, but some people particularly were having a really horrible time during that. And a lot of people were stuck on their own, a lot of people couldn't get to people, it was hard. And finding music that feels familiar and feels like a friend in those times is a beautiful thing, no matter what it is. And if people found that in what I do, then I'm very grateful. And
it was one of those albums that, I know especially for me and people I know, it went viral. People were going, oh, have you heard this? Have you heard this album?
Yeah.
And because I saw you supporting the Sisters in Manchester just beforehand. And then I was like, oh, this is good. I like, and I like what you were doing and stuff. But then the album came out, and everyone, it's one of those ones that, again, it almost shows the power of the internet as a way of spreading music.
Absolutely, and at that time specifically, we were all literally just sitting in our houses, scrolling about on our phones, refreshing Facebook and doing all of that stuff, and it was, just a byproduct of the situation we were all in, I guess, that people had a bit more time on their hands, people were exploring things, people were searching for something that wasn't just bad news all the time, and just kind of landed at the right time, I guess, in a weird way.
So how did it feel then to take it on the road afterwards, after having that, that enforced stop?
There is a very big difference between reading someone's comments about your music on the internet and seeing them react physically in a room when you play that song. There's a big difference. So you can hear, oh, people gave it a good review, or oh, so-and-so person enjoyed that song, la la la, great. But until you play it out loud, you don't really know how that's going to go down, and you kick into those songs and you see a crowd start to move as one, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it's scary.
Yeah.
See, I did it today, singing a new song that I haven't performed to these crowds before, and you never quite know what's going to happen, but you see them start to move and they start to get into it and they start to enjoy it, and as I say, this large mass of people all start to kind of move as one, and it's a beautiful thing. And if you can see that happen when you play something to people, it's a gorgeous thing.
So has it been an obvious choice to actually play different types of venues? I've seen you in, you played an interesting disused church in Manchester a couple of years, about 2 or 3 years back and stuff. And have you made the choice to play different venues rather than just your usual academies?
Partly it is a logistical thing in the sense of you're trying to find a venue that can, where the capacity is correct for what you're trying to achieve. And not every city has every kind of level of venue, do you know what I mean? So obviously on the big support tours you can play nice big academy supports, and you can kind of, same like today, let that music expand to fill the space that it's given, so if you're playing this arena here, or you're playing kind of Manchester Academy, whatever, it will do that. It will also work in a small space, because ultimately I'm at a stage where if I'm going to do a club show, it isn't going to be a huge thing yet, and that's fine. It's a development, it's a journey. So as long as the music works in all of those spaces, then I'm happy. I mean, the church in Manchester was part of a tour that was arranged just after COVID, so there was still social distancing involved and all of that stuff, and still a lot of seated gigs. So from that point of view, it was about finding something that could accommodate that logistical setup as well. But I loved that gig. Hal St. Peters, it was a very, very
It
cool
was
show.
brilliant. It was
really
fantastic.
nice.
I remember literally walking in. It was like walking into a school assembly because everything was just so quiet, and you know.
I know,
But it
was fun.
had a hush about it. It's almost a reverentialism. You know, I think that's one thing that really got me with the stuff you were doing. There was something actually quite spiritual about it.
You know what? You're not the first person who said that to me, and I don't write music with that in mind to kind of create that experience for people, but multiple people come and give me that feedback at the end of shows, and it's a beautiful thing. If I can create something that transports people to a place where they can feel whatever it is that music does to them, and it kind of is an immersive experience rather than just passively watching a band and kind of nattering to your mates and not really caring, you know. So if that can be achieved, I'm very happy.
Well, that's the thing I remember about the gig, the fact that it was just silent, absolutely silent. But you know, let's talk about the second album. You know, As the Moon Rests, it was darker. It was darker. It was heavier. You know, did you go into writing it to make it, or did it happen as you created it?
A bit of both. I mean, I wanted to explore more thematically but also instrumentally on the second record, partly because I wrote Forever Blue very quickly, and for me it was about just giving myself the time to explore things properly, and in doing so ended up going in a few different directions with certain things, mainly kind of from a production point of view, because I didn't want to just do the same thing again, but I needed there to obviously be enough common threads between the first record and the second record that people would not go, who is this? It doesn't sound familiar, you know? So it was mainly a product of having more time to work on it, and just a little bit more in terms of budget and a little bit more in terms of, you know, the knowledge of others getting involved and kind of helping me to create that.
Was there also a level of, you know, because as I said, sort of the first album, Forever Blue, really resonated with lots and lots of people. Was this feeling, okay, people like this, I can actually do this, I can actually sort of take this somewhere?
Definitely. I think whenever you release something and you have positive feedback, it verifies that you're doing something right. Now, I'm not going to spend all my time writing and worrying about whether people are going to like it, but I do want to make sure that people who already enjoy my music still enjoy the next thing that I put out. That's, you know, all I really worry about is I want to make sure that I'm not taking such a step in a different direction that it doesn't sound like the same person, you know? So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know, it's a hard one.
Building on that, you know, where are we in the creation of the third album? You know, you talk about, you know, where are we, where, you know, where do you go?
I'm working on songs. How they kind of manifest themselves, I'm not quite sure yet. Whether they're all going to be part of an album, or, you know, I tend to write more than I need to generally, and then cherry pick my favorites rather than just writing 5 and going, well, they're the 5 because I made them, therefore they're great, you know. So I'm in that process at the moment, and I'm trying to just experiment again, trying to push myself, trying to see what happens if I try and write a song that doesn't change key, or where I do this thing that I haven't done before, you know, push myself musically and see what comes out.
And how much do you create on your own? How much do you create with the band that you play with?
I write all of, like, the actual writing is me on my own, and now for the first time I'm working with Matt, my guitar player, who's also a producer, and we're working on new material. And as I say, what happens to that new material, I couldn't tell you yet. I don't know, but it's an enjoyable thing to switch it up a bit and to change that process, because that kind of second part of the process, we've done, you know, the songwriting, I've done that already, but that kind of layering of new instruments and exploring the textures, that I haven't done with anyone before. So it's a fun thing.
And how much is there any pressure, you know, from record labels and stuff to actually get something out, or are you just at the point of, you know, it will come when it comes?
It's a self-imposed deadline that I've created here, because I don't have anyone applying that pressure, but I'm also aware that these things are not quick. Even if you deliver a record tomorrow, it's not going to come out the next day, you know? So I do want to get it done in a sensibly speedy time frame, but without rushing myself to the point of doing something I don't want to do and putting out something I'm not happy with. So, you know, there's no rush, but also I don't want to dawdle, you know?
Okay. So we might see something next year?
That would be cool.
Okay,
that would
so
be
that's
cool.
that's not a yes, it's not a yes,
it's not
we
a
might.
Yeah, but it's not a no either. It's a I would like that.
Yeah. And, you know, you were very clear, this is your only UK show of the year, and also there will be nothing until next year. You know, do you have things in the diary already for next year?
No, I don't.
So the diary's empty.
No, it's a
Dar's
big old
card is-
empty diary. So, you know, people want to fill it, be my guest. You know,
You heard it
you
here,
send me a
if you've got an
message.
offer?
You know, if you got a good offer, you let me know, huh?
Brilliant. And final thing just to ask you is, and we ask this to all our interviewees, is sort of, so if you were given, you know, Gavin runs this, if Gavin said, right, next year, you can basically curate a stage. We will have the AA Williams stage.
All right, okay.
Who would you have? Who would you invite along?
I would put on Health,
Yeah.
Green Lung,
Yeah.
Holy Fawn.
You've thought about this? You've thought about
No,
this before,
it's just
isn't it?
lots of records that I've been really enjoying while I've been traveling recently, and those three the newest records of all of those three, I've been really listening to a lot. I would put on. I mean, how big a bands are I allowed to choose?
You're
Can I
allowed
say
anybody.
Anyone
Everybody-
who's not dead.
Everybody
right?
picks Nick Cave. It's weird. Everything was
I'm
on.
gonna choose Nick Cave. I was going to go with Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah,
but
no.
You can put Nick Cave on if you want on your stage.
No. Everyone we ask, it's literally Nick Cave always comes. And it's either Nick Cave or, as you said, Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah. Well, I would choose Nine Inch Nails over Nick Cave personally. But then I would also have maybe. Oh, I don't know. It's a tricky one. I have to go through my Tidal playlist and come back to you and let you know.
Well, it's been absolutely lovely to chat to you.
Thank you so much.
And you were fantastic earlier on, and we will hopefully, fingers crossed, there will be things to listen to next year.
That would be lovely.
But Alex, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You've been watching Rockfest, talking to AA Williams here at Damnation. Reviews will be up hopefully early next week. Subscribe, all those things, and we'll see you later.